Goalkeeper Void is back for Game Week 34. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan. The free hit chips are flying this game week. But whether you are activating a chip or you're just using regular old transfers, we've got you covered with some tips today. And by the way, guys, if you haven't checked out the Stick to FPL podcast episode for Game Week 34, make sure you do go check it out. We've got a nice long episode where we talk about everything Game Week 34. We're going to be deep diving on all of the different positions, captains, and everything like that. So you do not want to miss this one, particularly if you are on a free hit, because it is a free hit special with plenty of discussion and debate of all your favorite players. And if you're new to Buy Sell Keeper Boy, this is how it works. The video will be split into two sections. The first section, we will be having a look at those players you may already have in your team and which ones you should keep and which ones you should sell. After that, we'll be looking at replacements, which players you should buy and which players you should avoid. Players will be tier listed with the best players at the top and the worst ones at the bottom. And today, guys, I appreciate a lot of you guys are going to be on free hits, so you might just want to be looking at the players to buy this week because you can't really sell players when you're on a free hit. It doesn't really work like that. So do feel free to skip to the second half of the video if you are on a free hit this week. That's going to be far more useful for you guys. The videos are always in chapters, so you can skip around and check out whichever segment of the video that you would like to see. Of course, if you are not on a free hit, this first section of the video is going to help you out a whole bunch on what kind of players you might be looking to keep. Even if they do blank, there might still be some players there that you might want to keep in your FPL teams. But guys, I'm going to throw this on screen to start things off because, of course, we do still have the possibility of a double Game Week 36 and a blank Game Week 37. And basically any team that doubles in 36 will blank in 37. And this is dependent on whether the Premier League decide to move those FA Cup final fixture clashes from Game Week 37 back into the midweek of Game Week 36. So I've got the odds on screen for you guys so you can get an idea of who is likely to have a double and who is likely to have a blank in 36 and 37. This is becoming increasingly more likely with Spurs progressing in Europe, but I just wanted to throw this one out there so you guys can have a look at some of this. We have, of course, also got it on screen for a lot of the players we're going to be talking about today. We're going to have it in the Game Week 36 and 37 section. You can see on screen, for example, we've got Evanilson and Wood on screen already, and we can see that we might see a double in 36 for each of these teams, but we might also see a blank for 37. So I do apologize, guys. It is a bit messy for Game Week 36 and 37 at present. We don't know for sure. Hopefully we find out a little bit sooner rather than later, but still, it's something to be very aware of, particularly if you are making transfers this week rather than using a free hit. It's pretty important to be aware of this kind of stuff right now. So if you're using a free hit, you're going to be fine. We can wait till Game Week 35 where we should have much more concrete information after the FA Cup semi-finals have taken place, which of course will be this weekend. But let's go some of these players anyway. We're going to try and speed through the sell section so we can focus a little bit more time on the buy section. So first of all, Evanilson, Wissa, Wood, keeps. These all are players with fixtures this week. And if you are just making transfers this week, you're not on a free hit, then you're probably going to want to keep these kind of players in your team because you're going to have a few blank game week players. And all three of these players, whilst they might not have the best fixtures in the world, they're decent enough to do something with. We're going to be covering these players in more detail in the buy section because I think some of these guys you could even potentially buy this week as well if you don't already have them. Moving on to the monitors, we've got Raul Jimenez here and Cody Gakpo. And the reason primarily is because of that rotation risk for each of these guys. Raul Jimenez often rotated with Muniz, but we're not sure if Muniz is going to be available. And Gakpo, he is unfortunately a player who rotates with the likes of Diogo Jota there. So therefore, even though both of these players have pretty good fixtures for this game week, the underlying numbers aren't phenomenal, as you can see on screen, guys. Just 0.7 XG over 6 game weeks for Raul Jimenez and 0.33 for Cody Gakpo. But it's more important that these players just might not even start and could be looking at 1-pointers this week. So there is some risk around these players. Now, going further down the monitor section, I would still put Marmoush and Watkins in monitor. Even though they don't have a fixture, these are players I might actually consider keeping this game week because these two teams, Man City and Aston Villa, are the odds-on teams to have double game weeks in Game Week 36. So if you can manage to bench them, or maybe even keep them in your starting 11 for Game Week 34 and play with 10 men, then actually it could be well worth holding on to them and hoping for some really nice looking double game weeks later on in the season. Both Man City and Aston Villa's doubles look pretty decent here, so they are definitely going to be players that you want to have in your squad later on in the season, and therefore, could you possibly keep them? Could you possibly bench them this week? If it's possible, I definitely think it's worth giving a go. As for sells, Mateta I am going to throw in here. The form has not been there for Crystal Palace in general recently, but Mateta as well, just 0.78 XG over the past 6 game weeks, of which he started 5. And no game week 34 fixture. And yes, there is still a good chance of a double in 36 for Crystal Palace and Mateta. But my question is, given that it's less likely than the likes of Man City and Aston Villa, and given that Crystal Palace just don't look so great at the moment, is he worth keeping when compared to some of these other blanking guys? In my opinion, probably not. Beto, poor fixture, not even starting really anymore with many Everton forwards now available. Chelsea away is a pretty poor fixture. So overall, Beto is going to be a sell regardless of his availability. And finally, Joao Pedro. Speaking of unavailable, we've got this guy. Yeah, a suspension, a red card in the last game week 33. And he is actually going to be suspended until, I believe, is it the last game of the season? Let me just double check that one before I lock that in. But yeah, game week 38, I believe he is back. Unless it is somehow game week 37. So it's going to be game week... Oh, sorry, it's game week 37 he returns. So he's suspended until the 19th of May. So he will be available for 37 and 38, but he will not be available for West Ham, Newcastle or Wolves. And after that, you've got Liverpool anyway there. So I think he is a pretty straightforward sell, because not only is he blanking for game week 34, unlike many other players, but technically he's also going to be blanking for 35 and 36 as well. So a pretty easy sell there, I think, for Joao Pedro owners. In midfield, we've got a whole bunch of Game Week 34 blanking players in this list. I can't lie to you guys, but if you are not on a free hit, Bruno and Palmer are not worth selling this week at all. I know some people are going to be complaining in the comments, as they always do. How can you possibly say Cole Palmer is a keep? Well, among the most popular, most sold players this game week, Palmer is one of the very few who actually do have a fixture this week. And if you're not on a free hit, those players with fixtures are pretty useful right now, and therefore Palmer is going to be more useful than a guy who has no fixture, even if the guy with no fixture is a better pick generally. So Bruno, I think, is a pretty decent option regardless. 15 shots, 18 key passes, and actually has been getting the odd attacking return recently. In fact, he's had 4 attacking returns in his previous 6 game weeks, one of the games of which he was benched. That was in game week 33. But back against Bournemouth, I think he could do the business again in this game. Cole Palmer, not so hot on the attacking returns, just 2 assists in 6 game weeks, of which he has started 4 games. The Everton fixture is tougher, but, you know, I still think he's fine to keep if you are not on a free hit right now. I think that's fine. If you are on a free hit, or if you're not on a free hit, Rodgers, I think, should still be a part of your main squad. Of course, when you're free hitting, he won't be in your free hit squad, but Rodgers is definitely a player at 5.7 million with a high probability of a double in game week 36. I think he's worth keeping. Just shove him on your bench. He's going to be a really nice Aston Villa asset to have later on in the season, where we see a lot of rotation among those Aston Villa attackers. Rodgers has just been a mainstay, and therefore, you just got to keep him. Cheap, effective, bench him for this game week. Enjoy the points from him in future game weeks, because what a value for money pick he has been this season. Into the monitors, and I guess this is kind of in order. I think I would try and keep Saka on the bench if possible. As he builds up his minutes throughout the rest of the season, we're going to see him play more and more often, regardless of what other competitions Arsenal are in. Saka is a guy who plays every game for Arsenal when he is fit. And by the time we get to game week 35, which is his next Premier League fixture from game week 34 onwards, he will have been back playing for Arsenal for well over a month at that point. It's not like he is going to be protected playing, you know, half a game each week for the rest of his career. He's going to start getting much more game time pretty soon, getting back into form, getting back into flow, and building sort of that that momentum into the Champions League games as well. So I do think Saka still has a really good chance of starting against Bournemouth at home, and he could do really well there. From what we've seen of him so far, and although he hasn't always got the FPL returns, if you look at him in the Champions League, if you watch him play football, he is playing brilliantly right now, and he's a player I would quite like to own for Game Week 35. So if you can keep him, I think I probably would, but you know, there's definitely an option to sell him if you're not on a free hit this week, of course. Rashford and Asensio, also players you could consider selling, but I don't think they are must sells if you can hold on to them for later on in the season. And De Bruyne, a little bit riskier because he is going to be rotation risk because of his age, because of Man City maybe prioritising the FA Cup. You know, if Man City progress in the FA Cup, and say Man City do have a double in Game Week 36, what is likely to happen, actually, is that De Bruyne maybe only plays one of the games in Game Week 36 as he's rested for the FA Cup final, and then Game Week 37, he would have a blank there anyway. So I think the minutes you're going to be able to get from De Bruyne, sort of from Game Week 36 onwards, might be a little bit tough. Should be good for Game Week 35. After that, it's going to get a bit messy if Man City do progress. And if they don't, well, there's no double game week there anyway. So that's kind of my opinion on De Bruyne. I would lean towards selling him. I don't think he is a must sell or anything like that. If you can bench him for this week, you know, fine. But if you do have to pick a few blank game week players to sell this week, I think De Bruyne would perhaps be one of them. Similar to Mateta, I would find it pretty easy to sell those Crystal Palace guys right now. They're just not doing the business right now generally. So yeah, kind of get rid. And Marino, I think, because he is, well, he's not exactly a Saka, let's be honest. Saka is worth keeping because he is just such a wonderful FPL asset generally. Marino is more of a punt player, nice to have for the double game week 33, but probably was never in your long-term plans. And no double game weeks, tougher fixtures from game week 36 onwards. I don't know if he's this kind of in the same vein as Saka. You know, Saka's been, you know, doing really well, even in difficult games, even in the Champions League, you know. So Marino, not as confident there. So he would be a player I would be more willing to sell, let's say. Underlying numbers, not too hot here either. Just 0.99 XG and 0.18 XA here. So not as many shots, not as many kind of key passes here compared to some of the other players on this list. So slightly easier sell, I think. For those defenders, we have got Cucurella here. First of all, he is going to be a player I would keep. It's a pretty decent fixture against Everton, actually. So I really don't think he is a must-sell player, really, at all. We've got Wan-Bissaka here as well, given that he was kind of maybe close to playing in game week 33. I think he is worth keeping for game week 34. If you have other issues in your team, Wan-Bissaka is probably not a player I'd be looking to sell. Again, just to clarify again, if you are not on a free hit. Gavardio, I would keep though. I think he is a season keeper now for your FPL team with the double in 36. You know, pretty nailed on Man City defender. I think he's going to be useful for many game weeks to come after game week 34. So a player I would be more willing to just bench for this week and move on with your team with hopefully some better players in your starting 11. Saliba could be considered a season keeper, but the fixtures are not great for a defender. So I would be a little willing to sell Saliba if not on a free hit right now. Konsa, Munoz, also players I think I would be more willing to sell than the likes of Gavardio. Ola Aina has to go in the monitor section until we know his availability, if he is going to be fit for the Brentford game or not. Nuno is not giving us too many clues here, so it's difficult to say for sure. So for that reason, he's in monitor. And some of the easier sells here for the blank game week 34 players are going to be like Mark Gay, pretty straightforward sell for this out of form Crystal Palace team. We've got Yuri and Timber, who is rotation risk. And to be fair, I think Timber probably starts, you know, 2-3 out of the final 4 games for Arsenal from game week 35 onwards. But is it worth that headache at 5.7 million? Probably not, given the quality of the fixtures. And Dino, also another rotation risk player. Even with the double game week, you don't know if he's even going to play in it. So that's a little bit difficult with him as well. Of course, Maatsen scoring at the weekend probably doesn't help Dino's minutes potential either. So those are all of the sells and all of the keeps. But I think we'll do what everyone's been waiting for, and that is the buy this week. But if you are enjoying this video, please do feel free to drop a like. It really does help out the channel so much. Do subscribe if you're new around here as well, and love your FPL just as much as I do. So let's get stuck in with these buys, and the top 2 players are going to be Isak and Cunha, and I think these are probably the most obvious players for game week 34. Now, of course, some of you guys will be on a free hit, some of you guys will not be on a free hit, and I think this probably impacts your decisions. Obviously, Isak and Cunha look pretty nice if you're on a free hit right now with great fixtures in Game Week 34. But actually, both of these players don't have amazing fixtures from Game Week 35 onwards. So whilst free hitters, absolutely go for these kind of guys. It's going to be really, really nice. If you're not on a free hit, I don't think they are as priority over maybe some of the other players on this list who actually could work out a little bit better for you over a 5-game week period, because we do have 5 game weeks left of this season. But certainly Isak has been in reasonably good form. He's putting up some of the better numbers among forwards this season with 2.45 XG over the past 6 game weeks with 16 shots and 7 big chances. Cunha, little tiny bit of risk there, because of course Bellegarde was unavailable for game week 33, and some people are suggesting that that the reason Cunha started was because Bellegarde was unavailable, and if Bellegarde is available for game week 34, if we do get that news, then Cunha could drop back to the bench. But I mean, with Wolves not really too much to play for, you do have to wonder, Cunha, who looks like he's going to be out the door at the end of the season, is he going to be a player who is prioritised for game time rather than Wolves looking to prepare for the new season by playing players who are actually going to play? If Cunha's out the door, if Cunha was to get injured, this could be a pretty bad situation. So I don't think Cunha is a player who is just a write-off for the rest of the season, but there is that possibility that he does see his minutes reduced, because quite frankly, he's not a priority player in the long-term plans of Wolves, or so it would seem. Of course, so much speculation going on here, but I definitely did want to highlight that. If you did want to be a little bit more cautious on Cunha, then I would wait until the Bellegarde injury news. If Bellegarde is out, that probably suggests Cunha is going to play again in Game Week 34 against Leicester, which that could be a haul, let's be honest. But if Bellegarde is available, that does put a small amount of doubt around Cunha, and it would be wrong of me to not warn you about that one. And our final buy here in the forward section is Evanilson, and the reason he's in here is because he is our data pick. He's our data guy. 20 shots, 7 big chances, a phenomenal 4.62 XG in the past 6 game weeks. This is unmatched among players in FPL. No player over the past 6 game weeks has generated more expected goals than our good Brazilian friend Evanilson. Now, you may have some doubts around Bournemouth, and I totally understand that, but Manchester United at home could be a good fixture, considering that this is a team that are clearly prioritising Europe at the moment, and maybe not so much that domestic football. So it could be an opportunity here for Evanilson to continue his trend of at least generating a lot of shots, a lot of XG, and being that focal point of this Bournemouth attack, which he certainly has been of late. So again, a player who I would be a little cautious about if you are looking into the longer term of your picks. But free hitters this week, I think you could definitely afford to go for a player like Evanilson if you wanted to. But there are some other interesting players that are maybe nicer longer term. And let's start off with Welbeck. Now, this is a pick I really like. He's a very high monitor, definitely a player I'm looking at right now. With no Joao Pedro, that increases Welbeck's potential minutes, but it also puts him on penalties. And we know by now that Brighton, they get a lot of penalties, right? Joao Pedro has proven that, but this time it'll be Welbeck stepping up to take them. So Welbeck, he's been a reliable player whenever he's on the pitch. It's just a case of trying to predict his minutes. And now it's a little easier to predict his minutes against the West Ham team, who are looking weaker and weaker each week from a defensive point of view. There are some okay fixtures after that. Newcastle at home, they can concede the odd goal, and Wolves there as well. It's not such a bad pick for a couple of game weeks, but certainly for game week 34, I really like it. Now, if you are looking a little bit longer term, then perhaps Whistler and Wood are going to be on your radar. Whistler has been in some great form with 3 goals and 2 assists in the last 6 game weeks. He faces Nottingham Forest away next, and I know that sounds like a pretty scary fixture, but after last night, the game against Spurs, Nottingham Forest, over a 10 game week period, are the 4th worst team in the league for expected goals against. Only the 3 newly promoted teams are putting up worse expected goals against numbers than Nottingham Forest. It sounds crazy, but Forest, when you watch them as well, since Christmas, they're just not really defending the way they did at the start of the season. It's not looking as good, really. They're a little bit more all over the place. I do wonder if Brentford could get a few goals against Nottingham Forest, given that they are conceding so many chances. So Wissa is firmly on the menu, particularly if you're looking for a player for the rest of the season. Wood is also on here. Wissa, Wood, maybe players I'm less keen on a free hit. But certainly if you're looking longer term, Chris Wood has that small but very possible chance of a double in game week 36. And that would be a really nice double as well against Leicester and West Ham. But that would rely on Forest beating Man City in the FA Cup semi-final to even have a chance of that happening. And we've got Strand Larsen here as well. He's a low monitor because I think you're probably not going to double up on the Wolves attack. And if you're going for just one Wolves attacker, you're probably going for Cunha, right? If you're buying a new player for game week 34. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. Raul Jimenez and Muniz drop into the avoid section, unfortunately. I know it's seemingly a good fixture against Southampton, but it is away from home. And also the rotation and just the spread of goals for Fulham make it very difficult to pick these kind of guys. You know, when Fulham score a goal, it could be one of about 8 players. You never know who it's going to be. So unless you think Fulham are going to beat Southampton 8-0, I don't know. I don't know if it's super likely that, it's going to be Raul being the guy to score. And that's kind of proven by his numbers here. Just 5 shots in 6 game weeks, 0.7 XG with just the goal to show for it. Muniz, when he's been playing, has been better, but we're not even sure on his availability either. So for now, he has to be an avoid. If Muniz is available for the Southampton game, then straight away, you cannot pick Raul Jimenez anymore. But even going for Muniz, you probably have a little bit of risk there if he's not 100% fit. And finally, Jackson is, of course, going to go in the avoid section. I mean, that's exactly where he belongs after the way he's treated me this season in FPL. Midfielders next, and we've got a Newcastle duo at the top. Barnes versus Murphy will be a big topic of discussion this week. And although Murphy has got a lot of the plaudits from the FPL community, in the real world, Barnes has been the guy. He really has. He's actually doing slightly better than Murphy. What we've seen recently, and we spoke about this a lot on the podcast that will be uploaded right now for you guys. Barnes is actually playing deeper into the games than Murphy. Murphy is getting early substitutions right now, particularly with Gordon now back and available. Barnes and Murphy both likely to start ahead of Gordon. They're both in great form, but it's actually Murphy being substituted off first for the likes of Gordon rather than Barnes. And we can also see the data here, 19 shots versus 8 shots for Barnes against Murphy. If you look at big chances, 6 for Barnes and just 2 for Murphy. The creativity slightly skews in the favour of Murphy, but we know the big points are in the goals, and the XG numbers are much higher for our good friend Harvard Barnes. The points difference is not massive, but I think it's significant enough that if you had to pick just one of Barnes and Murphy, I think you pick Barnes at this point. That said, they're both great, and a double up is definitely on the cards as well against Ipswich at home. Must-win game for Newcastle. Every game is a must-win game with Champions League football on the cards. They should be at full strength, and full strength does involve both Barnes and Murphy. People will say maybe Gordon comes in, but right now, I don't think these players can be replaced. And comments from the Newcastle team have suggested that both of these two will continue to play. So I'm going to be pretty confident on that one. Brian Mbeumo is next in the buy section. We mentioned about Forest being actually a pretty nice fixture right now, generally speaking. And Mbeumo has been in some great form, particularly last game with the 2 goals and the assist. Absolutely phenomenal. And putting up some decent data to back that up as well, with 1.74 XG, 1.88 XA as well. So I think he could be pretty good for you guys. Luis Diaz is a high monitor. While Salah has been disappointing, Luis Diaz is playing pretty well, sometimes through the middle as a striker, and he does seem to have secured that place in the Liverpool starting 11, at least for now. If you're looking for a short-term game week 34, 1-week punt on your free hit, I think Luis Diaz has to be part of that conversation against the Spurs team that continue to leak goals. They should be pretty weak in their lineup as well in game week 34 as they look ahead to the Europa League game up next for them. So I would say Luis Diaz is a really nice pick and potential captain option as well. Maybe that's too far, but Luis Diaz I really do like. Fernandes we spoke about earlier, he's definitely a potential buy for you guys. Alanga and Bowen are also going to be in here. And if you're looking for something slightly longer term, I think these players are more appealing. Again, their Game Week 36 double, both of them depend on Forest beating City in the FA Cup semi-final. But at 5.4 million, really nice value for money with Alanga, who has been in good form. Bowen, also been in pretty decent form. The problem is with both of these players is that their data is not as good as a lot of the players above them, and their fixtures aren't quite as good as well. So when we're looking at these players, their kind of output has been around the same, maybe slightly lower than the other players on this list. I just think if you're on a free hit, there is probably less argument to put an Elanga or a Bowen in your team compared to the kind of 5 guys above them on this tier list, I suppose. And if you're looking to bring Palmer in, I don't think I would do it, to be honest. I know a lot of people will because they'll be looking to spend all of their budget, but even on a free hit, I'd probably rather have a few million in the bank than pick Palmer over the likes of, you know, Barnes, Murphy and Burmo, Luis Diaz, who really do look like the hot properties for this game week. After that, we've got Kaoru Mitoma, who is also a pretty interesting pick this week as well, but I'm not sure I'm totally convinced by him compared to, again, a lot of the other players on this list. When we look at the data here, Mitoma is certainly one of the weaker players for data recently. And how about Iwobi? Now, I'm not going to speak about him too much here because we spoke about him a lot on the podcast this week. And I'm also going to throw this up as a clip on the Stick to FPL TikTok account. I might even post it on Twitter as well, to be honest, for you guys to hear my full Iwobi rant. But anyone who's watched Iwobi will know that his returns are not sustainable. And even though he has got some attacking returns recently, it's deflections, it's, you know, booting the ball in the air and the ball happening to land at the feet of a teammate for them to score, and he gets the assist for that, or crossing the ball and it ends up in the back of the net. And these are kind of all his returns. Well, at least most of his returns, like 80% of his returns come in these crazy ways. And I say 80% of his returns, he's only actually returned in 4 games of the last 19. So you're looking at a player who gets at least one FPL return once every 4 games. And even when he does, it's under like the most bizarre circumstances. So do I trust Iwobi as an FPL asset, even against Southampton? No, I don't. And also, I don't even think Iwobi is necessarily nailed on anymore. He has been on the bench a couple of times in the last 6, 7, 8 game weeks. So something to consider there. And that's why he is an avoid for me. Despite the FPL points, they don't tell the full story if you have been watching our good friend Alexander Iwobi, who I love as a player, by the way, but as an FPL asset, he's been a bit of a scam artist. Defenders next, Ryan Aït-Nouri. It takes the top spot here. Nice fixture against Leicester. He is a player who is getting a few attacking returns, but the attacking numbers look good for him as well. 0.5 XG and 1.65 XA over the past 6 game weeks. That's really, really nice for a defender, and actually gives a lot of the midfielders and forwards a run for their money as well, which is really good to see going into this new game week. He'd actually be one of the first players on a free hit team for me. But Sessegnon is also going to be in here. A newly rejuvenated Sessegnon playing in the attack of Fulham, playing on the wing rather than in defence. Just 4.1 million. And he plays against Southampton next. Particularly, he has been playing on the right wing, and the left side of Southampton's defence has been a real weakness this season. So from a tactical matchup perspective, this looks really, really good. 2 goals, 2 assists in the last 6 game weeks, with another assist against Chelsea at the weekend. I think he got another assist disallowed in that game as well, actually. So Sessegnon looking really, really hot right now. I know he hasn't been super popular up until right now, but believe me, there is good reason why he is being hyped up as a superstar differential for the new game week. And in 3rd place here in the buy section, I'm going to put Newcastle defenders generally. We've got Fabian Schär in here, but really Trippier, Livramento and Schär, they are all have their own strengths. I know Schär has been the guy scoring the goals recently, taking a few shots recently, but I think the creativity of Trippier and Livramento, still there's a lot to be said about those guys as well. So I don't want to put Schär above the rest. If you have a strong feeling about one of Schär, Livramento or Trippier, then that is the guy you probably should go for. But they're all great. They're all buys. Cucurella is a potential buy, a defender who is also capable of attacking returns. He plays Everton next, which is a nice fixture if you're a defender, with Everton continuing to struggle for goals. Robinson is going to be in here as well as the left back. And the worrying thing is that Southampton do have a tendency to score very frustrating goals against FPL managers and the FPL managers' defenders. And Robinson is not showing as much in attack right now. He was massively overperforming earlier on in the season with all of the assists that he was getting, but he's kind of regressed to mean now, and therefore is not getting FPL points. So therefore, I'm not as keen on him as some of the other guys, but he's still definitely a consideration for sure. Van Dijk you could go for. Spurs are still a pretty decent attack, but I think they'll put out a pretty weak lineup as they look to lose that game to ensure Arsenal cannot win the Premier League title. It's just Spurs things, guys. This is the best they can hope for in terms of success this season, is preventing Arsenal of winning anything. But hey, what do I know? So yeah, you could go for Virgil van Dijk, potential attacking returns with some aerial threat, but really nothing crazy. Kirk is also a consideration here at 5.3 million against a Man United team we are expecting to rotate. Alexander-Arnold, I think, is still a little risky this week. You know, he could start against Spurs, but it's not guaranteed. And even if he does start, are we going to get all the way to 60 minutes with him just coming back from injury? And even if he does get to 60 minutes, are we guaranteed a clean sheet with Spurs actually being a pretty decent attack generally? I'm not totally convinced by this one. I think it's a little bit too risky if you're on a free hit, or even if you're not, because the fixtures after that are not great for Liverpool to spend 7.2 million on a defender. So I'm going to hold off on Trent for now and put him in the avoid section. Hey, you never know. It could come off, but I'm not super convinced by how certain that is. Let's put it that way. Milenkovic also going to go in the avoid section. Like we mentioned, Forest pretty poor defensively. The fixture against Brentford is a pretty tough one. I think there are much better options right now for you guys. And Dan Burn is going to be the only Newcastle defender in the avoid section, because you can't quadruple up on Newcastle, and given that there are 3 clearly better defenders for Newcastle than Burn, I don't really see how it's possible to buy Burn this week when there are so many better options right now. So he has to be an avoid by default. So that's why he is in that section. But again, remember guys, this is about buying players. If you already have Burn in your team and you're not on a free hit, you're not making transfers, like, Burn is absolutely great for Game Week 34. Don't get me wrong, but this is about buying or not buying a player. And I'm saying don't buy Burn. I think that's pretty clear given the other options of defenders at Newcastle we have at this point. Right, goalkeepers. Keep Martinez and Henderson. I think they are benchable this week, and you can just have them for a future game week at some point. Maybe doubles, and one of these players is probably going to double in Game Week 36. We'll have to wait and see what the Premier League do with their rescheduling. But yeah, I think with goalkeepers generally, if they've got a chance of a double game week later on in the season, doesn't matter if they've got a blank now, just use your other goalkeeper, or, you know, swap out your other goalkeeper for a new one who does have a fixture this week. And for sells, Ederson, because of that potential injury, you know, really the only times to sell goalkeepers is if they don't have a fixture, they're injured, or they're suspended, or they just simply don't play, a la Fabianski. And if you're looking for a new goalkeeper, I'm going to throw Leno and Pope in here as nice little buys. Of course, if you're on a free hit, you can maybe switch things up a little bit more than that. Maybe there are a few more options for you guys, but we'll put Leno and Pope here for buys, certainly if you're looking for something a little longer term. Sells, however, if you're on a free hit, I think sells is an avoid. Yeah, I know. But we've spoken about Forest already in this video. I don't think it's controversial to say, you know, you don't want Milenkovic. I don't think it's controversial to say, oh, you do want Mbeumo and Wissa. You think Mbeumo and Wissa are going to score in Game Week 34. But if you believe all of that, then it also means you think sells is going to blank. So therefore, I think sells is going to go down for me as a avoid, particularly as the Game Week 36 double is not particularly likely. Let's have that Leicester single game week though, I suppose. But I would give it one more week on sells. I don't think I'd go for him this game week personally. And Pickford is here as well, away against Chelsea. Not a great time to buy. Again, maybe wait one more week before going for him. And that is all the players we are going to talk about today. That was a lot of players discussed in today's video, but if I did somehow miss out on talking about any particular players, let me know in the comment section. I will happily give them a rating. Are they a buy, a sell, a keep, or an avoid? If you enjoyed this one, make sure you drop a like. Massively helps out the channel. Do subscribe if you're new around here. You can check out the Stick to FPL podcast using the link in the description, or just search Stick to FPL on your favorite audio platform. But until tomorrow's video, where we'll be checking in on the experts, I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.